everybody. I'm Ken Shamrock, UFC Hall of Famer and the WWF Superstar, Intercontinental Champion, Tag Team Champion. And I got an interview coming to you on the Hannibal TV.
So I'll just jump into it. You've discussed in a lot of your other interviews that you had a bit of a broken upbringing. Could you just briefly go over some of the struggles you had to deal with in your childhood?
Yeah, just make it quick. As a young child, my mother, biological mother, was a go-go dancer, which in today's world is a stripper. She had to make ends meet. And during those times, women couldn't really go out and work. Well, my father had left us at the time and was off doing other things. And so my biological mother had to find ways to support us and be able to work. And it was hard for women back in them days to really get jobs. So she got into that industry. Well, with that came us being left at home a lot. At the age of 5 and 6 years old, we were stealing food out of trash cans and just taking broken toys from neighbors that they had thrown away. We grew up in this ghetto area, which was really a bad area, predominantly African American.
What city was that in?
This was in Macon, Georgia.
Okay.
Born in Warner Robins Air Force Base. And so there was a lot of fights that happened because of the color of my skin, not knowing it at the time. Just as kids, we kind of hear what the parents are saying, what the parents are doing, what you see on TV, and there was a lot of racial tension in those times, which is in the 69 and 70, and people were being killed over the color of their skin on TV, and you're seeing all the tension. So it kind of infiltrated out into the parents, and the parents infiltrated out into the kids, and the kids took it out on each other. And not knowing and not understanding it, just knowing that there was hatred there. And so I fought a lot at a young, very, very, very young age, and I was left home by myself with my 2 older brothers, who, if I was 5, it went 5, 6, and 7. And so we struggled all the way up until we were about, I don't know, I think I was about 8 years, 6, 7, 8 years, somewhere around, I don't know the exact time. Ended up, my mom met a guy that was flying helicopters in the Army, and he had been in Vietnam and ended up going out of there, or in the military. I don't know exactly what the extent of his duties were, but I know he flew, and I knew he flew in combat. And so with us not having the structure that we had, as being left home a lot, fighting all the time, stealing, and basically fending for ourselves, in comes a military guy. Takes us to Napa, California. He tries to structure us, tries to do all the things that he wanted to bring these kids up to be, outstanding young men. We fought him every step of the way. Ended up getting stabbed, ran away from the house, lived in a car for a couple months. Got busted. Went into juvenile hall at 10 years old. And from the time I was 10 years old till I was 18, I was in placement, a ward of the court.
And how did you end up with your adoptive father ultimately? Was that in the boys' home?
Well, when I ended up becoming a ward of the court, I was put into several placements, and I failed all of them. I don't know how many there were, but pretty much all of them. Ended up one last chance before I went to California Youth Authority, which is kids prison. They put me at the Shamrock Boys Home, which is the last stop before I ended up in prison. And that's where Bob Shamrock, who became my father later on, actually showed me how to vent my frustration, my anger. I was a very angry kid. And so he showed me the anger and the frustration that I had. He directed me in a direction to take it out as positive things like wrestling, football. I excelled at those things because I was able to just completely let myself go. But I also had to learn that the only way I was able to do that was I had to play within the rules. And so he showed me how to play within the rules with sports, and then he showed me how to take the same work ethic and the same frustration and the same anger, and learn how to play within the rules in the world.
And how exactly did you do in wrestling in your younger days, in amateur wrestling?
My senior year I was undefeated. And then, this is one of those things where learning how to vent my frustration and anger, it just seems like when I started to get going, other things started to happen. So my senior year I was undefeated. I had colleges looking at me for football and wrestling, and I broke my neck. My senior year I broke it, and all my scholarships, everything disappeared. Nobody, like I had the plague. And but that's business. I mean, that's just what it is. And so a couple years down the road, which is about a year and a half down the road, I was told that I would never play contact sports again. Now, as I told you, I didn't know anything else, how to direct my anger in anything other than sports. That's how I survived. And now it was going to be taken away from me, along with all the other things that happened to me in my life, with no parents, raising myself. Seemed like everything was being taken from me. And here was one more thing. At 17 years old, my life is going in the direction I want it to go. Everything's working out. And one instant, it's all taken away. No fault of mine, because it's something that happened. Told I'd never play sports again. And I remember telling Bob at the time, he might as well shoot me. Like a horse in the pasture breaks its leg. Just shoot me, because it ain't good for anything else. And I remember him saying, listen, just have faith. Let things work out. Let things play out. Don't all just right now because someone says something doesn't mean that's the way things are going to be. So just give yourself time. So he said, just don't think about it. Just start, just put one foot in front of the other and just go forward and let's see where things go. And so I took his advice because I trust him in everything else. And so I didn't think about it. I didn't think about not playing sports. I didn't think about playing sports. I just went forward and started training and started lifting. And within my mind that I was going to get healthy again and I was going to play football again. And from the time that I walked out of the hospital till I played college football a year and a half after that, I trained from morning time till night time with the intention that I was going to get healthy again. I went from 167, 168 my senior year down to 140 after being in that halo for 6 months. And then a year and a half from that, 6 months, a year and a half from that, I was 220 pounds. And I was standing on a football field starting middle linebacker for college. And I had to go in to the doctor and get a release form because they would not stand behind what I was trying to do. So I had to go in and get a release form, take it to the school, and let them know that this was on me. That if anything happened, they were not liable. And did that. And then I was an All-American. It's just team captain. Did it all. And of course, we all know my career up to that. After that, I went into other things. But that right there is just a testament to determination, faith, and just with a no-quit attitude. Never give up.
And you mentioned your workouts. What are some of your best lifts? A lot of people want to know that.
I'm not sure people would believe me, but there's people around that see me do it. When I was a senior in high school, it was the summer before my senior year, and we did this thing we do every year for football. We did this lift, and we would do percentages over body weight. And I weighed 160 pounds at the time I lifted, just barely 160, and I benched 320. This is my senior year. From that time when I started training and broke my neck, started training, put on, I was 220 pounds. It's probably 6 years after that, after football and all that. I did a bench press contest in Mooresville, North Carolina. And I was going against some big Indian guy who was a super heavyweight, and I think I weighed 227 at the time. And in the gym, I benched 605 with no shirt, no nothing, just a straight bench. In the bench press contest, I hit 585. Missed 605.
Wow.
with no shirt, no bench shirt. So I've always been extremely naturally strong.
And is it true you actually had a tryout with the San Diego Chargers at one point, or you were offered a tryout?
Yes. I actually got a letter in the mail after I was done with college, and had an opportunity to go and try out with the Chargers. At that time, and this was after I broke my neck and I played college ball for a while, I started feeling almost like there was something else out there for me. I didn't want to play for a team that was going to use me for short yardage. Hand the ball off for, half yard or a yard, and everybody in the stadium knows I'm getting the ball. So I'm going to take a lot of hits and then block for somebody where I'm going to have to hit people all the time. And not that I cared, because I loved hitting. But I just felt like in my mind, like that was short-lived, and then my success would depend on 11 other guys out there. Actually, more than that. You're talking about defensively and offensively. There's a whole nother team out there that you have to rely on to score points, and then defensively your team has to come together and stop them from scoring. So there's just a whole lot of people involved for your success. And I thought I had an opportunity to go out and do some pro wrestling, be able to call my own shots, be able to make my own success, and I didn't have to worry about anybody else doing that but me.
Were you interested in pro wrestling when you were younger?
My father watched it a lot. I remember watching Moondog Mayne and Pat Patterson back when I was going through placement and stuff of that nature. I didn't understand it at the time, but I thought, man, those dudes are getting after each other. As I got a little bit older, I started understanding a little bit more, and so I wasn't so interested in it. And actually had kind of almost whatever, it's fun to watch, but that's not for me. I need something a little more serious.
So who actually broke you into the business?
After I had kind of I ran everything out. Like I played football, went into the Marine Corps. It just seems like I ran everything out, like all my options. I didn't want to be in the Marine Corps anymore. That didn't work out so well for me because I ended up going after a drill instructor. And I got an honorable discharge, but it was a mess. So I kind of just ran that out. So it was just sitting in limbo with nothing to do. And my father said, hey, why don't you try to do pro wrestling? I was like, okay. Just kind of like, okay, yeah, it's something to do. So I went to Buzz Sawyer for a while, went down to Sacramento, and I should have known a little bit sooner, but it took me about 6 months to really understand that I wasn't going to go anywhere there. After I had signed up, paid my money, we didn't have a ring or a gym to practice in. We'd go down to a fitness center, we'd use a racquetball court, so they'd lay mats down. And he would bring guys in, do tryouts once a month, and guys would come from all over. And most of them were like bodybuilders and, ex-football players, just big guys. And he would have me, he'd come, he'd say, listen, we're going to do tryouts, and I want you to beat them up. Don't let them pass. Okay. I didn't know where we were going with it, but okay. So I would go in, and I would thump all these big dudes that come in. I'd wear them out. They'd throw up. They'd quit, and they'd walk away. And, Buzz kept the $600 or $1,200. I don't even know what the exact number was that he charged me. He kicked me $200 to $300. And I was driving up from Reno to do the tryouts every weekend. Yeah. And so about 6 months into it, I said, this is not working. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not learning anything. I'm just beating guys up. And so my father then started searching for some places on the East Coast because it was the hotbed. And so he found Nelson Royal and Gene Anderson had an organization going up there. And so I did a tryout. And after the whole day I tried out, it was a 4-hour tryout, and then he put me in the ring with some shooter. Some kid that was a wrestler. The guy was probably about 6'1", went about 230, 240 pounds. And what they didn't realize is that's what I was. So he put this guy on me, and after I did all that tryout, I beat the hell out of this guy. And then Nelson goes, okay, well, I went through his wrestling program. 3 months into our training, I was in the ring wrestling with Nelson. I put him over for the belt. Well, 3 months after that, he put me over, and I was carrying the strap for our organization. 6 months after I had just stepped in there and started doing it. During that time, and I think that's why Nelson put the strap on me, was during that time there was 2. I'd done 3. One of them in Reading before I came up. It was a tough man. It was during football, and I knocked everybody out, won the tough man. Well, then they had one in Hickory and one in Statesville, Carolina. And it was during the time I was doing pro wrestling. And they were paying like $5,000 for the winner. So I went to both of them at both places, and they still have the videotapes, so any of this could be proved, is I won both tough mans. One of them was 2 days, it was kickboxing, and another one was just boxing. And I was at 2-day tournament in the one in Statesville, and just a one-night tournament where I fought 4 times in one night, and won the whole thing. And Nelson went to one of them and watched me fight in the finals and win it. And so after that, he thought it'd be a really good thing for our organization to actually have somebody that was a real deal shooter that was carrying the strap.
And was it during that time that you had that run-in with the Nasty Boys that they like to talk about all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, it was during the time I was in South Atlantic Pro Wrestling. This wasn't in Nelson's. It was after Nelson had stopped, and then there was George Scott started one up, and I was carrying the strap for them. I ended up carrying the strap for them. And I remembered we were at a club, and I was with a friend of mine who set up the ring. And he's a nice guy, you know. He was hanging out with the boys, and me and him became friends, and we traveled sometimes together. And he had his wife or fiance with him, and we were at this Pancrase's, and we were sitting up at the bar, and they were already there. We came in, and they'd had a few drinks, and they were tipsy, and they were messing around, and they reached over and grabbed her tit, and my buddy goes, "Hey, come on." And she was really mad. She was upset, like, like, "What are you doing?" And she's welding down. And so I didn't say anything, because you don't get in the middle of the boys, you just whatever, let it roll. Well, he did it again. And now we're talking about, this is borderline rape, because, he was grabbing her. And it was like, she made it very clear that it wasn't okay. Well, then my friend was a little more upset, which I couldn't blame him, but he can't take these guys. And so then I said something. I was kind of laughing. "Oh, come on, you guys, man, enough. All right, you had your fun." And they were like, whoa, what are you doing? You sleeping with her? It was like, oh, man, whatever. He ignored it, and he did it again. And I lost it. And I went to go after him, and as soon as I did, because of what was going on, the bartender had told the bouncer, which I didn't know at the time, that these guys were doing that, and they were going to kick him out. Well, just as that happened, the bouncers luckily had just come up, or otherwise I'd been in jail, come up and saw him do it again, and I went at him, and this dude was a big dude, 260, big bouncer, grabbed me from behind and squeezed me and said, "Hey, Ken, it's me, man, chill out." And I was like, I wanted to kill him. Well, the other bouncers kicked him out, told them guys to get out. And so they ended up kicking him out. Well, I was fuming, big time fuming. So I knew we were staying at the hotel downtown. I knew that's where they were at. So as soon as they let me go, they was talking, and I said, "All right, man, I'll see you later." Heading out. This is probably a half hour afterwards. I went to the hotel, and I went to knock on the door because I was going to get in their face and say, "Listen, that's uncalled for. You want to end up in prison? That's exactly what's going to happen." So nobody answered, and I knew they were in there. So I ended up kicking the door down. And as I kicked the door down, the other one, the kind of shorter one that was a heavier set one,
Knobs, I think,
was laying on the bed. The blonde-haired one is laying on the bed, right, face down. And so I just kind of like paused, and that's the last thing I remembered. Now, from what I was told, was that when I came through the door, the big one was hiding because obviously they were afraid because I was pissed. And the other one just laid on the bed. It was like, "Ah, he ain't coming, he can't get in." Well, when I came through the door, the big one had grabbed this phone, and the phone on the bottom had a steel metal plate underneath it, right? And so as I came through, he hit me in the back of the head. I don't remember, then I went down, and then he put the boots to me, both of them. They had steel-toe boots. They cracked my sternum, broke my nose, pretty much almost killed me. Then drugged me outside and were going to throw me over the top of the rail. They were on the second floor onto the ground. And one of the guys came in, I forget his name, an older guy. And he said, hey man, you guys need to stop. He stopped them from doing it, otherwise I wouldn't be here today. Well, went to the hospital. As I was going to the hospital, they had to revive me because I had passed, I was dying. They did that much damage.
Yeah. So
I get home and I was laid up for months, recovering. And in my head I was like, I'm going to kill him. When I see him, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to end their days. And especially the big one, because the big one was the one that I kept hearing talking smack.
Right.
Well, they were leaving the next day to go to the WWF. And so my path went in a different direction. I was going to Japan, I was doing things over there, ended up doing the fighting over there, and then of course came back to the States, started fighting here. But the whole time all this was going on, I kept hearing them guys saying how they beat me up. How he beat me up one-on-one. Like we were facing each other and he just beat me up.
Because he claims Knobs was passed out or something.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the only truthful thing that he said was that when I went in the door, Knobs was passed out. But he wasn't passed out for real. Because he jumped up as soon as the jackass hit me from behind. They both started putting the boots to me. Right after I was out. And there was no need to do that. He'd already knocked me out with the phone, right, from behind. So the reason why I was so angry and so really wanted to get at them was because of the intent that they had. It wasn't like I didn't know them. It wasn't like we didn't hang out together. It wasn't like we didn't talk or weren't friends. At least I thought. And they were wrong. And for them to go to that extent, to know somebody and do something like that, to me, I can't put that in. I don't know how anybody could do that.
Because you were one of the boys with
them. Well, even if you didn't like somebody, but you're still around them, to go to that, just, to me, I don't know how somebody can do that unless they're not normal. And so the anger was inside the whole time. The minute I saw him in an airport. And I was in the WWF and they were out. Because of their antics and it's the way that they treated people and the things that they'd done, they got kicked out. Which didn't surprise me. And so I heard the stuff that was said when I went there, and of course the boys were ribbing me about it because they knew it was a sore subject. And I kept saying,
he's got the reputation of a tough guy all of a sudden.
Yeah. So I said, hey, whatever, and they kept ribbing me, and I just say, hey, anytime that he's around, you guys will see what I'm talking about. See, because I don't need to say anything because I'll prove it. I got no problem stepping in front of him and proving it. But I'll bet you he does because he knows where I'm at. And I've kept calling him out, telling him to step up and show everybody how tough he is because I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to stand in front of him and let him beat me up the way he did before, the way he claims he did. Please show everybody in the world how tough you are. I'll be there waiting. I'll stand in front of you. I'll even let you throw the first punch. And that's the statement I made. I'll let you throw the first punch. And I'll let you hit me. And I'll bet you I'm still standing there. And when I'm done, when you're done throwing that first punch, then I'm going to kill you. Literally put you in the hospital like you did me, except I'm going to be facing you. And these are the promos that I cut before I ended up finding him. When I finally found him, I was with Billy Gunn and Road Dogg. We were checking in at the table, at the counter. And I saw the short one. And I just turned red. I dropped my bag. And he saw me. And he just beelined out of there. Right? Well, then I saw the taller one. And I looked at him. And I started to go after him. And Billy grabbed me. And he goes, not here. Not here. And I was shaking. And so I dropped my bag, right? He beelines, right? And I'm shaking the whole time. And I had to get checked in. So I get checked in. And we head towards the gate. They're gone, right? And I'm like, Like I was just so angry, and I was trying to calm down. And Billy's like, dude, it's just, you never seen anybody that intense. Well, we're walking up to the gate, and I hear this voice. Hey, man, what's wrong with Shamrock, man? Somebody better give that dude a chill pill. And I saw him. And I beeline towards him, jumped over the seats, spun him around, and I looked at him and I said, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. As minute I said that, he turns. He has a bag in his hand. He turns his back to me, kind of like I think he's going to swing at me, right? Because he looks like he's turning. Maybe he's going to come back. He drops his bag, and I'm like, go ahead. Like I said, I'll give you the first punch. And what comes out of his mouth next is just all the anger and everything I had in my body, just like, and all the boys are there. I mean, they're all sitting there at the gate. And he goes, if you hit me, it's a federal offense. I was like, that's it? After all this time and how tough you said you're going to be, that's your comeback. That's your play. Really? Literally, everybody sitting around just right then and there proved my point. It was like, if you hit me, it's going to be a federal offense. I was like, if I hit you, I mean, in my mind, if I hit you, you're going to be dead. Forget about federal offense. I'm going to be freaking on death row. But I was so angry all that time that when he said that, it was like all the boys were around. It was like I didn't have to do any. There was nothing else I could have done that would have been better than that. Than him completely cowering down and pussying out in front of everybody that he was talking about. If he saw me, that he'd whip my ass again. And here I was. And if you hit me, it's a federal offense. And I was like, whatever, man. Go away, dude. Your day's over. So for me, that was it. Didn't have to lift a finger, didn't have to beat him up, nothing. That right there was enough for me.
You mentioned that you started wrestling in Japan after that. How did you first get booked in Japan?
I was actually working with the South Atlantic Pro Wrestling at the time. And I was asked if I wanted to go to Japan and work in Japan, which I'd never, like I said, I'm very, very green. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll go. It was exciting. It's an adventure. I was going to get paid good money. And so when I went, I got booked out there and I went. And I remember when I was in Japan, I started to wrestle. I realized for the very first time, because everything else just came easy to me, because I just felt like natural. But when I went there, it was so much faster. The selling wasn't as intense. It was a lot of high spots. And you had to be quick on your feet and quick thinking. And so that was the first time where I said, you know what, I'm out of my league. I mean, it was literally, and it's all in WWF too. Just the skill sets, was when I did the house shows for WWF. I just realized, like, wow, this is compared to what I was used to and what I had seen. I thought it was going to be an easy cakewalk. I was just going to get there, and I had to that point. But when I experienced that in Japan, I was like, this is a whole different ballgame. And I remember I would stay with the young boys before and after I would do my matches, and I worked with Doug Furness and Crawford.
Okay.
And work with those guys to kind of help me along. But I would go an hour before and then after, would stay with the young boys and learn bumps and learn, the kind of the way that they did their wrestling, which wasn't a whole lot of selling. You hit, boom, and go. You instant sell and go. And so I'd stay and I'd start learning. And after, I went for 6 weeks. I believe I was at a 6-week tour. And I stayed the whole time. Sometimes they'd send guys home that just wasn't carrying it. But I stayed the whole time, which sent a message that at least they kept me because I was working and trying to get better. And by the time we finished the tour, 2 weeks before I went home, I was actually catching on and feeling good. And actually, Baba pulled me aside and said, hey, we'd like to have you back. Which was a big deal, because when I first started, I was so far behind the 8 ball, but by the time that I was going to go home, they invited me back. So that was my first real experience of really being in over my head. Up to that point, I mean, it seemed like everything just came natural.
And when did you start doing the actual Pancrase fighting out there?
I was traveling with Dean Malenko. He was staying at my house. He was working with us with South Atlantic Pro Wrestling. And me and him were traveling together. And he showed me this videotape. And it was, I remember the Japanese guys now that I was over there. I actually built an organization with them. Minoru Suzuki and Masakatsu Funaki. Those were the two guys I saw on the tape that were fighting. And I remember watching them, and they were kicking, they were punching, and they shot, took down, and then they were submissions, and they're back to their feet again. I never saw that combination before, except for in a street fight. It was like, is that real? Is that like, I mean, is this something real? And Dean said, yeah, my dad was up there, and Sammy Saranaka is the booker for the United States to send new talent over there. And I said, man, I want to do that. Now, I'd already won Tough Man, so people knew my reputation. And I wrestled in high school. I had the wrestling stuff. I didn't have any submissions. So I told Dean, I said, how can I do that? He said, you come up to, Florida and go to my dad's gym and, meet Sammy and try out. I said, I'd love to. So he hooked us up. I flew out there. The same day I landed, I go to the gym. I meet Sammy Saranaka, who's passed on since then. Shook his hand and said, yeah, hey, I'm Ken. I saw that. I'd like to, do something. Well, there was a couple guys there, including Bart Vale, who was one of the top American fighters. And so they other than, the stuff I do on the street. And so I went in there and I whipped all their asses. I didn't have any experience. I was just a street fighter, I was a tough kid, very strong, and I wrestled, I boxed. And so 6 weeks after I did that tryout, Sammy brought me to Japan, and I did a tryout there. And I remember at first, same thing, flew in, landed, drove to the gym, got in the morning, drove to the gym. Sammy says, warm up. And so there's two young boys there. And so I start, going one of them, and I handle him pretty easily. And then I watched these two other guys walk in. Well, the other two guys that walked in was Suzuki and Funaki. Those are the guys I saw on the tape. And then I was like, uh-oh. So they put another young boy in. And I pretty much just, throw them all over the place. And each of these are about 20 to 30 minutes.
Right.
So I've got about an hour now.
Yeah, they're trying to wear you out, kind of.
Yeah, but I'll be the first one to tell you, it didn't matter if I was tired or not. Those guys would have killed me. No question. But the idea was to wear me out enough to where I would quit. And to make me quit was make me so tired that when I had to go against those two guys, I would say, yeah, man, let me get rested up before I go against them. I mean, that's what they were looking for, see if I would try to find a door. And which is what I use now for my technique in finding young talent. The Lions Den tryouts is what I got from Japan. That's how I developed all that, was to test guys to see whether or not they would give me everything they had. And that's what they were doing with me. It was like I was tired after going an hour with these young guys, and I pretty much dominated them, and I felt good. But I knew those guys were at a different level just because I'm pretty streetwise. I see talent when I see talent, tough guys when I see tough guys. So they said, okay, you want to go a little bit more? And so they pointed to Suzuki, and I said, yeah, no misstep, no stutter. Yep, let's go. Because my mentality was, kill me. Because I got nothing else in this world except what I can do. And you're going to have to kill me to take that from me. That's just been my mentality since I was a kid, because I didn't have anything else to rely on. So he comes in and I go after him, and he chokes me out, he hooks me. I mean, he just tears me up. And we went probably another 30 minutes, and I'm tired. And so Sammy goes, hey, good. He goes, oh, you want to go some more? Like, giving me a way out. And I said, sure, absolutely. I mean, I'm tired. So Suzuki comes in, and Suzuki's much bigger. And same thing, chokes me out unconscious. I'm waking up, it's like not knowing where I'm at, heel hooking me. I mean, he's having his way with me, just stomping on me. And I keep going, and I keep going. And pretty soon Sammy goes, "You had enough?" I said, "No." So we keep going, and he'd go harder, trying to get me to quit. Now my nose is bleeding. I mean, I'm dizzy, and I'm stumbling, but I'm still going. And Sammy goes, "You had enough yet?" And I go, "Nope." So he kind of chuckles, and he said, "Okay, that's good." And I said, "No." I said, "You want me to go? I'll keep going." He said, No, we've got what we wanted." And I said, "You sure?" He says, No, we're good. So, 3 months after that, I do my very first fight in front of 17,000 people. I'm number 4 on the card. I fight this young boy, Fouquet, who was there with the tryout, and pretty much beat him up.
Right.
So, I fight him, 17,000 people, and I had 3 months to train, 2 to 3 months to train for this fight in the United States, which I had to go to boxing, and then I had to go to wrestling school. There was nothing to do together. And I didn't have a gym at the time, so, I mean, I'm piecing things together, but I knew what I saw, I knew what I had to learn. I beat the guy. People started chanting my name. No one knows me. No one knows anything about me. But this is something that I've carried with me throughout my whole career. God-given. It is my expression, my emotion, my determination that bleeds through when I'm in the ring. That people understand that I can't lose this and that this means everything to me. However that is, and however it happens, God-given. But people feel it. And ever since that first fight, people chanted my name, my very first one, and I wasn't trying to entertain them, I was just very emotional intent. It's carried over in every single one of my fights. I've broken all kinds of records, no matter what organization I've been with. And the fans have followed me through it all. And it wasn't planned. It's just who I am, and it's God-given. Yeah, it's very frustrating for me because from the very first fight, when I got to Denver, Colorado, after I defended my title in Japan, I don't think this thing's going to happen. I fly in 3 days before the fight thinking, okay, they're going to say, okay, here's how it's going to work. It never does, right? This is supposed to be no holds barred, anything goes, no time limit. Anything goes. So what it's supposed to be. 24 hours before I'm supposed to step into the ring, they tell me I can't wear my wrestling shoes. Now, anybody that fights in the ring or understands what that means is like being on ice. You have no footing. I fought with it my whole career in Japan, wrestling shoes. 24 hours before they tell me I can't wear them. It's supposed to be no hold barred and anything goes. Any of that stuff. It's all good. Nothing. I'm like, okay. All right, I'll figure it out. I get in there. My very first fight back. You see me. I couldn't. When I was trying to take him down, I was spinning. Right.
Right.
My feet were slipping. So eventually, I just had to spin him down. Right. It was because I couldn't pick him up. I couldn't shoot and just take him down. My feet were slipping everywhere. I got him down. I heel hooked him. I finished the fight. I head back to my locker room. Because I brought multicolored trunks and clothing to wear into each fight. I get back to my locker room, I get ready to take my trunks up, put on my other ones, and they say, okay, you're up. It's like, I didn't even have a chance to go back and to breathe for a second. So, didn't change, went back out, the same thing, went out. Hoist, I'm fighting him the second fight. Hoist had 15 minutes to rest. I come in, I take him, go to take him down, I shoot, I'm slipping. I even sit back for a heel hook and I'm doing this on thing, and it shows it in the film. If you watch it, my feet's doing this. And I have his heel, but I can't get traction to really push off, get my legs wrapped around it. The whole time he's wrapping his gi around my neck. And I remember as he pulled it tight, I tapped. When the referee says, whoa, they didn't know he tapped and wanted to go again. And he said, you tapped. He didn't say, you want to go again? Okay, we go again. He didn't say that like they usually do. He's like, no, you tapped. And I remember thinking to myself, I looked at him and said, yep, I tapped. But in my head, I'm thinking, they took my shoes away. He said it was a weapon. And I get choked with a gi. How is that not a weapon? I just get choked by a gi. So this happened in about 2 to 3 seconds of my thought process. I remember to myself, I said, that's never going to happen again. I'll never get submitted again. And if you follow my career, I never did get submitted again. I lost by punches and technical knockout, but never lost with a submission. Second time I fight him. I mean, there's heat building up. I mean, everybody wants this thing to happen again. We go to fight again. I train for a 3-hour fight. I'm literally going to wear him down. I don't want to submit him. I want to wear him down to where he can't lift his legs up. I want to beat him into oblivion, and then I want to submit him. To smash all this talk about they're the best conditioned athlete, the submissions are the best in the world, and they're the best fighters in the world. I'm going to smash that. So I train for a 3-hour fight. I get to the fight. Pull me in a room. Sit me down. And they tell me, we got a time limit. This is the first time they've ever put a time limit into a fight. I was like, what? So yeah, we're going to have a time limit because the station wants to block off time. They want to have a certain set thing, which is probably true. I thought to myself, wow, I just trained for a 3 hour. I can't change my method. I mean, I've got to stay with what I'm doing. And I was like, okay, seems like I'm always dealing with something. I go in, I fight him. And if you watch the fight unfold, they literally carried him out after 36 minutes, right? Well, there's a 30-minute time limit they put in. I agree to the 30-minute time, no problem. The fight starts, I get to where I want, I'm sitting in his wheelhouse, I'm pounding his body, I'm pounding his head, I'm still staying in my game plan. I'm going to beat him down to where he can't lift his legs up. And then I'm going to pound on him, and then I'm going to submit him. I'm going to embarrass this guy. So my game plan is working out to a T. I blast him in, and hit him in the face, body shots, and I just feel him starting to wear. 30 minutes run up. Now, there's no judges. This is just straight up win or lose.
Right. Because there was still no holds barred at
Yeah, right. So they put a time in it, but they don't put judges in it, right? You're like, why wouldn't you have judges if you got a time limit? It's like, now you know a fight can go to a draw. So why don't you put judges in there? Well, because they didn't want to lose. So 30 minutes run up. And this is where I show you exactly how prejudiced and how set up this was from the time I entered this thing. Every time I fought Hoist, they were always in control of the rules. They were in control of everything. 30 minutes, I agreed to that. In a contract, there was a 30-minute time limit. His brother, Hoy and Gracie, who is the promoter of the event, runs up to the side of the cage, screams at the referee, screams at the timekeeper, and says, 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes. I'm like, are they not watching this fight? I'm beating his ass. They want 3 more minutes? So I was like, yeah, 3 more minutes, let's do it. So they do 3 more minutes. I hit him with the right hand. Boom, blow his eye up. I start beating on him. Literally, things are starting to roll out for me. He can't stop me. I'm hitting his body, hitting his head. Time runs out. I'm like, And so I get up, and he's barely just... His brother William runs up and goes, 3 more minutes. Now listen to me, people. I want you to understand this. It was a 30-minute time limit. It's a contract we agreed upon. And they're able to change the time, even though it worked out to my benefit. They're able to change the time limit because he runs out from the audience and tells everybody that's working there he wants 3 more minutes. So they grant him another 3 minutes. So now we're going to go 36 minutes. And I beat the tar out of him some more. Literally, he's barely hanging on. Time runs out. I don't hear anybody screaming for 3 more minutes. So I jump up and I go, hey, 3 more minutes. No, I can't. Oh, I can't get 3 more minutes. Oh, only you can get 3 more minutes, but I can't. So they called it a draw. Now, that's fine. Whatever. But they carried him out of the ring. This guy couldn't get up off the mat. They had to pick him up and carry him out of the ring. And then later on, he says it was a draw. How can you beat somebody that doesn't come to fight? And I was like, wait a minute. Are you telling me that I was just there stalling and I didn't want to fight you, so I just sat in your wheelhouse where you're supposed to live and die with your submissions, and I came to sit there and not fight you in your guard? Wait a minute. What does that say about your submission? Because if I was just sitting there and I wasn't fighting, how come you couldn't tap me out? Because I was in your guard. Third fight. I think finally I got Royce in a non-prejudiced system. Bellator. I got him right where I want him. There's no putting time limits in, no taking shoes away, there's no going 3 more minutes, there's none of this politics, no way to sway anything. I got you. You're mine. Set up the fight. The idea was to cut him off. Don't throw anything. Press him. Make him throw all his wild stuff because he's going to be afraid. He's going to be scared. He's going to be nervous. And just block, cut him off, keep pressure on him without throwing anything. Make him close the distance. And when he does, then we will unload on him and knock him out. So everything's going as planned. It is not the most exciting fight, but it is a plan. To just be able to get him to slow down and stop being spidery and flipping and flopping, which is knew he was going to do. He's going to throw all that stuff, try to get me to clinch and take him down, which we weren't going to do. We were going to knock him out. Well, after about 2 minutes into the fight, he realized that I wasn't going to take him down and that I was going to force him to stand up. Once he figured that out, I hit him with a knee. His head pops up. He grabs my head, looks down at my groin, and throws and listen to me, professionally, there's no way, unless you're intending to throw a low blow, that you're going to throw something like that with the experience that I have and he has, to land a strike like that. And then after you land it, take credit for a win. Jump on the guy after you already know you hit him low. You know positively you hit him low, and jump on him and continue to hit him instead of stepping back and going, oh, my bad. Give him time to recover. I hit him wrong. My bad. No. He jumps on it and takes credit for a foul and a win. This is my frustration from the time I stepped in the UFC with the Gracies and with Royce, of them always having a finger and a way to cheat and get their way around things. With that, and it's a black eye on MMA, and it's a black eye on my career, and it's definitely embarrassing for someone like Royce Gracie with his skill sets and his knowledge to take credit for that win.
And you had 2 very famous fights against Dan Severn. Do you want to just go through those?
Yeah, I remember the first time we fought, Phyllis was his manager, and it was pretty heated. But he was, you know, when he first came in, he was destroying everybody. He won the Ultimate. He was just blasting guys. But in my mind, I was like, he can't win. There's no way he could beat me. I just felt that dominant, that confident. And the first time I fought him, I felt like, dude, there's no way you can win. You can't beat me. You can't out-wrestle me. You know? And even if you happen to get lucky and take me down, what are you going to do to me? It's like, I got all the submission skills. I know the leg locks, arm bars, chokes. I know striking. I know fight standing up. I said, even if you take me down, how can you beat me? It's like, you gotta out wrestle me for however long, how many rounds, or however long it takes. So this is not gonna happen. And going into that fight, and that's how confident I felt. And we started the round, and same thing. He shot in, thought he was gonna take me down, and blocked it, choked him the first time. He got out of it, did it again, caught him in a choke this time, sunk it in, and I literally about broke his Adam's apple. And his last ditch effort, he pulled a Gracie. But it was legal then, so I had a steel cup on, and I was aware of it, and it wasn't a knee, it was a fist. Went right up and he hit it, hurt his hand, sat down, and I finished him. Second time we fought was in Detroit. And this is, and I don't know if people know this, but and then we had a lot of political things that were going on. They were, trying to ban it, and we even got kicked out one city and had to go into Dothan, Alabama to do a fight overnight.
Right.
So there was always these things going on. Well, when I went there, it was 2 to 3 weeks prior to that, these guys did a show over in Canada and they were arrested for striking. They were told not to do it, and if they did, they'd get arrested. Well, they went in and they did it, they got arrested. Now, I had a group home at the time when I was working with troubled youth, and I owned this home, so I worked for the state basically. They told us the same thing. I was like, at this time I had a cracked rib and a fractured nose, and I was like, I was going to knock Dan out. I was basically just going to ground and pound him because I couldn't use my knee. I had a bad knee, a bad rib, and a nose. So I felt like I'll just ground and pound him, Well, they took the striking away. They came and told us that if we were to strike, that we would get fined. Now, this is the UFC. But we would collect at our leisure. Wink, wink. Which meant, like, go ahead and strike. We're not going to do anything. And hopefully they're not going to arrest you if you do. Well, my mindset was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. I represent this group home and these kids that I'm trying to rehabilitate, and telling them that, hey, listen, you do anything you want, just like me. You can do anything you want if you stay within the rules, which is what I was taught. My anger, my frustration, as long as I stay within the rules, I was okay. And when outside of those, then that's not okay. And so that's how I grew up. That's how I developed my life and was able to be successful. Now I'm teaching these other kids the same thing. And now I'm being told by a professional organization to go ahead and break the rules, because even though it's illegal, we're okay with it. We'll fine you, wink, wink, which means they weren't going to collect. So, but the way this thing is stated now is that striking is illegal, and we could possibly get arrested. We're the main event. I wasn't going to fight, and they all came to my room, and even my father. You got to do it. You can't not do this. And I was already not thinking about fighting because of my injuries, but I felt like, well, I could still beat him just striking him and hitting him and, ground and pounding him, because I felt I was that much more dominant than him. When that was gone, I was like, how am I going to, I can't do anything. My knee's bad, so I can't do submissions, and my ribs bother me, so if he grabs me and takes me down and I can't strike him to keep him off of me, what am I going to do? It's like, but there was so much money right now. The place was sold out. The intensity and the build up for this fight. And so I said, all right, I'll do it. But I'm not striking. I'm not going to strike him. And my father goes, don't worry about it, man. You can just submit him. And I was like, Pa, it says it's hard enough for me to submit somebody when I'm healthy, let alone when I've got injuries. This is not easy going in there and trying to put somebody in submission position. So I go in there and I fight. And if you watch the fight, it was boring. The most boring fight ever in UFC history. I admit that. Dan says it was the most strategical fight. I was like, it was boring, man. He danced around the outside and never shot on me. I was waiting for him to shoot on me to try to at least stay in top position and look for a submission and try to catch a submission, which I knew it had to be set up for me. It would be hard for me to move around. But nevertheless, I couldn't strike him. And he didn't know that, though. He didn't know I wasn't going to strike him. So it was really a boring fight. I mean, it was bad. And so Dan shoots on me. I block him. I think it was only 1 or 2 shots in the whole fight. And I blocked him. Ended up on top. And so he spun through. I tried to put my hooks in. Lost my hook because of my knee. I couldn't get it in deep. So I slipped off it. And he ended up on top. And he started throwing punches. I blocked all of them. I think he may have landed 1 or something like that. But nothing devastating. I kick him off and back up to the feet we go. And this happened twice, but there's only one time that I ended up on the bottom. It was about 15, 20 seconds. But all the other times I was on top. I controlled him the whole time, whether it was stand up or on the ground. But I didn't do anything. The fight ends, and they raised Dan's hand. And I was like, how did he I was in control of the fight. Even though it was boring, I controlled the stand-up, and when he shot on me, I ended up on top both times and only lost position once when I went for a submission and missed it. Ended up on bottom. He threw, I don't know, 4 or 5 punches, and one of them landed, which was a glancing shot. How did he win? And Art Davies came to me, which is at the time was a fight, set up the fights. I said, how did he win? He goes, he landed more punches. I looked at him, I said, that's illegal. He looked at me and went, come on. I was like, come on what? And I never threw one punch in that fight, not one. And I lost it because he landed a punch. So that's one of those other fights. Not that it was, I should have probably just gave it to him on the performance. Both of us, it should have been stripped. Should have been open and let somebody else fight for it, because it was really a bad fight.
Were you disappointed that the fight that was supposed to take place between you two last year didn't end up coming through?
I was more disappointed in the way Dan handled it. There was nothing I could do about it. When I went into the fight in Texas, I was under a doctor's care. To my knowledge, they didn't test in Texas and hadn't to that point. And so I was under a doctor's care, age management for my hormones, plus the injuries that I had to my body. I was on some medication. And I found out 3 weeks prior to the event. Once I found out about it, I stopped. I was like, I had to get on alternative medicines, natural medicines. And I did that, but obviously it wasn't soon enough because some traces showed up in there. So I was suspended. And what bothered me about it was Dan knew that. And I was out of my control whether I could fight him or not. But then he started saying how I was a chicken, I didn't want to fight him. I was like, what are you doing? And I had to go to bat to get him to fight on that because they didn't want to use him. They didn't want to use him. I said, no, me and Dan have a history. We've got a rubber match. I won one. He won one. This would be a great setup. We could sell the fight. They didn't want to use him. They wanted to go with somebody else. And I'm telling you, so I went to bat for him. And then to turn around and throw me under the bus when he knows my situation. I can't talk about it because I'm going to court so that I can at least tell them and show them my medical history so they'll see what happened, and then I can be, let up. Well, he knew this, and yet he was bashing me in the media knowing that I couldn't say anything. That disappointed me very, very much because he knew it. And he stepped in and tried to bury me in the fan base by saying that I was afraid, that I backed out of the fight, I didn't want to fight him. And I'm the one that set it up. I'm the one that got him the fight. And I couldn't say anything because I was in court. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't go, hey, no, that's not what happened. He knows what happened.
Brock Lesnar had a drug test failure last year, and he ended up with a year-long suspension. What are your thoughts on that fight and his drug test failure?
I can't speak on people and why they're using it, but I do believe that there's a place for it. I think when people talk about steroids, they ban them all in one thing. I think steroids are a bad thing. But I believe that hormone replacement is a good thing. And I think that people are uneducated and they just clump it all into one. I can't speak on what anybody else is doing and whether they're abusing it or whether they're using it the right way. But I don't touch it. I don't go near it unless I'm under a doctor's care. And it is for a purpose. I'm 53 years old and I'm still fighting, and I've enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed a long career, and I love competing, and I want to continue to keep doing it as long as I can. I realize that now it's a little bit past my time, but during that time I still had the desire and the hunger, and I was still healthy enough to do it. But at the same time I had to keep my body to where it was going to stay healthy, and I didn't abuse it. I was under a doctor's care, making sure that everything was balanced in my body, so that when into a fight, if it was illegal to be on any substances, whether it was doctor's care or not, I knew in advance, and then I could actually replace it with natural substances that would go into my body. It doesn't work as well, but it still gets me where I need to be to fight, and I've done it before. The problem with the one fight is I didn't know until 3 weeks before, where Texas finally, just first time they ever tested, and I had to make some changes. So that's kind of the position on what I think with the hormone replacements and steroids. I think that they're two separate things.
And how do you think you would have done against Lesnar if you both were in your primes in an MMA fight?
Lesnar, yeah, listen, it's not about bragging, it's not about being better than somebody, but it's about skill sets. There's no question in my mind that the times that when I was in my prime, that I was the most well-rounded fighter out there, or in the world. I was the one that knew how to kickbox. I did kickboxing and Muay Thai. I competed in events in Japan. And I was a submission specialist going into the UFC for the very first time. So I was the most well-rounded fighter in there. And being able to fight a guy like Brock Lesnar, who is a wrestler, who has very limited skills in striking, in my prime, and him in his prime, he doesn't have a chance, because it's the same thing as Severn. How can you beat me? You can't beat me. If I'm in my prime and I have all those skill sets in my prime, and in his prime he was very limited on his skill sets, how can you beat me?
And just to quickly skim through some of your WWE stuff, did they recruit you out of UFC, or did you reach out to them?
No, it was both, because I had to walk away from there because they couldn't pay me what I needed to support my family, so I had to do something else. And so I was looking around, but at the same time, WWF was looking for a new kind of scheme, because Hogan left, Nash, I mean, all the top stars left. So they were looking and scrambling for something different. And it was a match that was made perfect timing, because they needed to go extreme. They needed to go cutting edge. They needed to kind of do differently than what was already being done. And so when I came in, they said, hey, here's a no-holds-barred fighter. This guy's a real deal. We need to turn our guys and our organization into, we don't follow the rules. We are rebels. And take that and then mold that organization into the Stone Cold Steve Austin, slamming beer, me with the no-holds-barred attitude, Bret Hart with the 1,000 moves and submissions, put him into a match, have Ken Shamrock stamp that match by refereeing it, and have those two guys put on the best match, WrestleMania 13, that was ever done in a wrestling ring, and turn the direction of the WWF into the direction that everybody else is now following, and blow away the WCW with all the superstars they had because of the Attitude Era.
What was Steve Austin like to deal with? You worked with him a lot in WWF.
Bret Hart and Stone Cold were class acts. Easy to work with, definitely open-minded, wanted to hear your ideas, and understood the psychology of wrestling, understood that the direction was changing. And for them to go from pro wrestling and the things they do to me being in the ring with them and turning a full 360 and going, yeah, you know, where we squeeze each other and we touch each other and we don't want to hit each other, to saying we're just going to beat the shit out of one another. And they did. And they turned the wrestling and the WWF from pro wrestling to the Attitude Era.
Shawn Michaels has a bit of a bad reputation from those days. How was he with you, working with him in the ring and backstage?
Well, he was fine with me. You know, I know that Bret and Shawn definitely had their differences, and I believe that Bret has a pretty good stance. I was there firsthand. I saw it front row. I thought it was really a bad thing, especially when you're talking about professional athletes trusting one another. That was opening the door for other people to just do what they want. It didn't happen, but it definitely was opened the door for people to just say, well, I'm not going to do this tonight. I'm just going to kick them in the face and let things be where they're at. So it was definitely not professional. But I worked with Shawn, and I know Shawn, and he was never bad to me. I mean, as far as me and him, I thought he was great. And I had a great match with him. We worked well together. And a terrific talented person. But I watched those two guys go at it, and I seen everything that happened, and I thought Brett was done wrong.
And what about working with The Rock? What are your memories of that?
Wow, well, that dude was loaded with talent. He was a star. I mean, just being in the ring with him and being able to do those matches, and just learning from him. Just learning how he was, able to take that charisma and just blow it out there. Especially watching him struggle, because I was with him when he was struggling. Changed his name to The Rock. All of a sudden, he got the attitude a little bit. He started getting the mic, started cutting promos, and all of a sudden, his character just developed. He became himself. He just started saying, I'm just going to just do my thing. And just watched him, develop. And I worked angles with him as he was growing. And we were both growing. We were both just like blowing up. And it was awesome. It was an awesome time.
And you also appeared on that 70s show with him. Was that fun?
Yeah, that was fun, especially to see what I look like with that big hair.
You also worked with Vader a little bit. What was he like? He's known for being roughing up certain people in the ring from time to time.
I thought me and Vader were a perfect match because I hadn't learned the skills yet. I still was pretty heavy. And so for me and Vader to work together, I thought it was perfect because he could tater me and I could tater him. And it was just okay. It was okay because he had worked in that style also. So I thought putting us together and letting us do a match until I could get comfortable in there, I thought it was perfect. I've got to go in there and be me. And he was a guy that could take it.
Would Vader have done well in MMA if he had started earlier on?
No. And it's not because he didn't have the skills, because he does. I just think, though, when you're talking about MMA, you're talking about conditioning. You're talking about being in great shape. And Vader, that kind of shape is just, it's much different.
And what led to you going back into UFC after your WWE run? You just had enough of wrestling?
No, I think that the falling out with Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and Vince, because I had trained with Bret. Bret took me under his wing, showed me the ropes. I was kind of in his group, rightfully so, because he showed me the ropes. He helped me out, and I didn't take a side by saying, "Oh, I'm with him." I was just known as being one of his guys. Not that I proclaimed it or anything, but I think that everybody, Shawn and Vince and all of them, saw me as being one of those guys because I stood behind Bret. Now, I don't know how those guys do things, but don't you think somebody that works with you, gets you where you need to be, shows you the ropes, don't you think that loyalty is something to be commended and not spit on? I'm not sure why they would look at me like that. I mean, I didn't take a stance against them. I took a stance for Bret, not for Bret against them, but for what Bret was going through. And I wouldn't stand against Vince because he was my boss. I wouldn't do that. But I would definitely stand with Bret as he's going through this stuff, but I'm not going to stand against them either. And I think that's kind of where it got confusing was I was with Bret. I mean, I was there when the thing happened. Look, and I was on his side, not against them, but because he was going through that. And so I think things started going rough. I was getting beat a lot. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you just smell you smell what they're cooking. And some things that I was asked to do, I just couldn't do it. And the culmination of being gone for 2.5 years, my kids were going to dances and my daughter had her dance and I couldn't go. It was just I was missing so much. And so with all that stuff happening and knowing that I was going in the other direction because of what happened, that my character was going to be stomped and beat on, and because I'd lost probably every match for, at that time, 6 weeks straight. I mean, all of a sudden it went from this, and when that happened, I was this. It was like, and I didn't do anything other than just be in part of the boys. So I saw the writing on the wall. And so I took some steps to ensure that my exit was going to be, comparable on both sides.
And without going into great detail, can you just sum up your feud with Tito Ortiz?
Yeah, don't agree with a lot of the things that he did and the way he did it, but you know, this guy was the pound for pound the best fighter in the world during his time, and you can't take anything away from him. He had a great career, you know, definitely one of the best. And I had my feud with him. Unfortunately, I had it with him when I was 38, 41, and 42, a little bit long in the tooth, and he was in his prime. So it did, you know, it was definitely going into the fight. It was definitely a tall task for me to try to beat him. But I believe that if I had not come back and had those fights with Tito, UFC wouldn't be where they're at today. Would not have sold for $4 billion because they were dead. And if not for what me and Tito did and those feuds that we had, they would be where they're at.
Because I think your first fight with him set a record for mainstream media attention or something.
Every time we did it, it set a record. Every time I fought in the earlier days, I set records. Every one of my fights were bigger than the last.
So you finally buried the hatchet with Tito.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And why did they never grant you your last fight in your UFC contract?
Yeah, it's a lot of political stuff and a lot of law stuff. You know, it's can't go into all the details, but you know, it's unfortunate because it was more of a personal decision rather than a business and contractual decision, and they went against the contract. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in, if you think just because you got a contract and you're in the right, you're going to win, you got another thing coming.
And is there any reason why you never fought Tank Abbott? That would have seemed to have been a big drawing match.
I think it's just the things that happen. I know one time I broke my hand. I was supposed to fight him. Another time he didn't make it. You know, he didn't make it through. So I think it was just the way the tournament was set up and a lot of those things. That's why we did the Royce Gracie fight, single fight, was because those things were happening. Royce got thumped by Chemo, even though he won, but he couldn't make it in the next round, and I qualified to be in the finals, and he didn't make it. You make it through. So that's why they had the single fights.
And for the Kimbo Slice fight, what do you have to say to the people that think that it was fixed?
Well, it's listen, that to me that's sad, because this is what we call realization. Things happen in fights, and what people are used to seeing from Ken Shamrock and then seeing what they saw against Kimbo, understandably why you would think that, because you're used to seeing something different. But I've got bad knees. When I hit the ground, I don't scramble my feet very well. When I'm on the ground and I got a submission, I do well. My stand-up's good. But when I hit the ground and I got to scramble back up, I'm slow. I just don't move that well. The only thing I could see about that fight, and I agree, is that when I put him in the choke and then he tapped. I see how people would think that that was, why didn't they stop the fight? I myself don't understand. Maybe it was a missed thing. I don't know. But I've questioned it. But I know it wasn't done intentionally. That I know for sure. But in fights, referees miss things. Fighters make mistakes. It happens. So as I'm sitting here, as God is my witness, that fight was not fixed. It was just things that happened in that fight that weren't normal.
And you had a lot of trash talking with your fight with Don Fry. Is that all cool now? Just it was the build up to the fight, or is there still animosity?
No, we buried that. He did something and he apologized for it. And we've moved on since then. Don's a good man.
There was some mention about, I guess, Ryan Shamrock at that time. What was the whole deal with that? Was there any...
Ryan Shamrock?
The character that played your sister on...
Yeah, they wanted me to actually have be in love with my sister, and my kids were 5 years old and 8 years old and 9 years old, and they didn't know what was real and not real. And if they'd have gone to school with that kind of gossip, I couldn't do that to them, and I had to deny. I had to say I can't do that.
Is it true there was some backstage issues with her in China when it's been reported in the news, but
No,
no.
no way.
She got along well with people.
Yes.
And what was it like being inducted into the first class of the UFC Hall of Fame?
When something like that happens, then you realize that the things and the hard work and all the effort that you've put in all along the way with the fans has paid off. You've done it. You've made it the Holy Grail. Can't wait for WWF to do that.
Yeah, that was my next question. Do you think they're going to ever put you in the Hall of Fame?
I don't think so. I think there's too many things that happen in that short amount of time, and a lot of it wasn't because of anything I did. I think it's just because of the circumstances.
What was your favorite memory from your time in WWE?
Oh, I would just have to say, traveling around, being able to see all those cities, meeting all the fans, different people, different ways of life. It was exciting, and I would have to say probably some of my favorite highlights in the ring would have to be with The Rock, because at that time, me and him were the #1 guys, both of us on the rise, and just the matches that we had were it was good times.
And you had a very memorable feud with The Undertaker there. Are you surprised that he's still going strong in this day and age, and how was that feud?
Yeah, Undertaker's second to none, man. He's that, when everybody talks about the one percenters, the guys in sports that are the one percenters, he's one of those guys. He's that one percenter.
And you were also the first ever TNA champion, which a lot of people don't remember.
Right.
What was your thoughts on working for that company and being their first champion?
Yeah, it was awesome. I've done a lot of things in my career that have been first, and that was awesome to be able to be a part of that, and to be able to step into an organization like that that's up and coming and still around. It was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Now that Jeff Jarrett is back in the booking of TNA, would you ever consider returning to wrestling, or are you pretty much done with that part of your career?
Yeah, I don't think I would go to, I don't know. I mean, like I said, anything's possible. I just haven't thought about it, the right opportunity, probably.
What are the main projects that you're working on now?
I've got a couple businesses I'm working with. Just got involved with a technology company, I Think Global Technology. We just came out with a new watch. They can do everything that a desktop computer can do. It hasn't come out yet. It's one of a kind. We're getting ready to launch that in the next year or so. And in CE3, where is something that I want to give back. CE3 is a celebrity and entrepreneur, and third is the company, us. What it does is turns around and helps athletes, celebrities who are at the end of their career. We see so many of them getting into the wrong things, going broke after 5 or 6 years. This gives us an opportunity to be able to match them with a young entrepreneur to help them be able to maximize their popularity, their celebrity status, into upstart companies, being able to give them ownership, equity ownership into companies as far as using them for marketing, cutting down their marketing costs, especially for companies that are looking for advertisement or for popularity, for people to turn their heads and look at their product. And so that's kind of what we do. We match them up with the right entrepreneur and celebrity, and then that celebrity goes out there and builds companies and works with companies to match them up to be able to create an income that they're used to having, like they were when they were actually in the peak of their career, being able to keep that the same by matching them with the right companies. So that's kind of what we're doing, to give back a little bit to help these people who are coming out of their careers and they're starting to fade down a little bit, and that money that they're used to feeling coming in isn't there anymore. We don't want that. We want to keep them going in the right direction.
And are you back on good terms with Frank Shamrock now?
Yeah, I mean, we got no problems.
And are you still training fighters?
Just my kids. Nothing outside of that.
What do you think would be the most important thing in the training of a young fighter or an aspiring amateur MMA fighter?
Options. Just making sure that they have options, because it doesn't matter if you're the best fighter in the world and you got all the talent and people are looking at you like you to be the next champion. Broken neck can happen tomorrow. Broken arm, something that'll stop your career from moving forward. And so to make sure that you have options. Don't have a tunnel vision and think that everything's going to work out. It may, and it probably will, but just have options.
Did you get more injuries in your career from wrestling or MMA?
Wrestling. Yeah, wrestling, no doubt.
A lot of people would find that hard to believe.
Well, in fighting, I got to take control of my situation and just, do what I got to do. In wrestling, you got to give your body up.
And a lot of people want to know this question. MMA fighters are known to have a lot of groupies, and it's come out in wrestling books that there's various groupies in wrestling. Which genre has more, from what you've, not necessarily from what you've experienced yourself, but from what you've seen as a top wrestler and top MMA fighter?
Yeah, there's no different. There's no different. It's the same thing. Got a couple movies right now that are in the works. I've already got one in the can. That will come out next year, or this year, the end of this year. Should come out. Grace is Gone. And I got a couple other options now that they've contacted me and possibly doing some other ventures. So, I dabble in it. It's not something I want to do like The Rock. To me, it just seems like it's a lot of dead time, shooting the same stuff over and over again. So, but I don't mind doing it every now and then because it's fun to see the finished product. But I don't want to do it like that.
And do you have any social media where people watching this can follow you?
Yeah, KenShamrock.com is my website. I got my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all my social media is on my website, KenShamrock.com.
And finally, is there any message you wanted to say to your fans that are going to be watching this interview?
Yeah, just, I hope, and I've said this in my other interviews, I've captured every title there is in the world that I have competed in. I've always risen to the top and been the champion, the guy. The only one I haven't done that is in pro wrestling, the WWF. I captured tag team, intercontinental, rookie of the year, king of the ring, everything but the heavyweight title. I will hope that somewhere down the road that all the differences be put aside and allow me to come back and at least get a shot at the heavyweight title. And I hope Brock Lesnar has it, because I'd like to come after him.
And you mentioned that if you could have a chance to have a one-on-one meeting with Vince McMahon, what would you tell him to try and get your point across on why you should get another chance?
Oh, I wouldn't ask of why I should get a chance. I think everybody knows I should get a chance. I think I would want to know why. What's the underlying, because everybody else has come back. I mean, look at it. All these guys have gone and they come back. They had issues with them, went to other organizations. WCW come back, and they still got in. So I would want to really know the truth. What was it that I did so bad that kept me out? Because obviously I have the talent. I mean, I brought in all those new moves that everybody's using now. I mean, listen, come on. You want to talk about somebody that has changed the face of wrestling because of them being in it? I think it's pretty clear I did that. And then for me to have an opportunity to come back and be able to at least get that shot at that title, because it eludes me and it bothers me. So I'd love to get a shot at that. I thought I earned my shot. It didn't happen, for whatever reason. Really not going to dwell on that. Just love to have an opportunity. But I think anybody that, if that's there and that has earned their way where they're at, I'm not going to question it. They're there and they got what they got through their hard work, and they got there. So God bless them.
All right. Well, thank you very much for doing this interview, and we wish you luck in getting that match with Brock Lesnar for the title.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who's got it, but it'd be fun if he had it.